your patience. We're ready to get started with the announcement of the return to school in the falls, starting with Board President Carrie Olson.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Carrie Olson, and I'm the president of the Denver Public Schools Board of Education. Thank you all for being here today as we provide an update on a return to school in August. Since closing our doors to in-person learning in March due to the COVID-19 crisis, many schools across the nation and across the world have had to adapt to a remote learning environment. The spring semester certainly looked different for us than what any of us ever imagined. But together, we made it to the close of another year, a testament to our Denver Public Schools community and the work that we can achieve together. Our educators, staff, students, and families have shown great strength in the face of much uncertainty. Many sacrifices were made by all to limit the spread of the coronavirus and to ensure that our community was safe and healthy. Everybody at Team DPS deserves a large thank you for all of their hard work, persistence, care, love, and dedication over the last couple months. All of us have missed having our students in our school buildings and in our classrooms. Team DPS has been working diligently along with our leadership and will continue to do so to ensure a safe return to school in August. While there are many details to work out over the next several weeks, we will do so with the overriding priority being the health and safety of our students and staff. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to my board colleague, Vice President Jennifer Bacon.
Thank you, Carrie, and thank you to the entire DPS community for working with us through what has been a rocky spring and summer thus far. We have heard from many educators and DPS staff on the importance of having students back in the classroom. We learned a lot in our transition to remote learning, what works and what doesn't, and we learned that for many students, nothing can replace the learning that face-to-face interaction provides. While school may look and feel different next year, we cannot wait to see students back in their classrooms among their peers and with their teachers come August. There will be some adjustments to make, and we must remain nimble to any changing circumstances. I want to thank our parents and families who have taken on the roles of co-educators at home. We know how much our students and families rely on our schools and the caring adults in them. Not having our schools open at full strength has had major learning and health implications for our students. On top of classroom instruction, our schools provide the critical mental and social-emotional supports that students need. I'd like to commend Superintendent Susana Cordova and her team for working closely with local officials and health experts throughout the ongoing health crisis. Ensuring the safety of our community is of the utmost importance, and this will guide the reopening of our schools and our buildings for the 2020-2021 school year. So now I'd like to introduce our Superintendent, Susana Cordova, to give an update on the return to school.
Thank you, President Olson and Vice President Bacon, and thank you all for being here with us this afternoon to talk about our return to school next year. I first want to start with just an incredible statement of gratitude to our school leaders and to our teachers and to the entire DPS community for their commitment to keeping students connected as we transitioned into remote learning this spring. I deeply value and appreciate all that our team does for our students. Over the past several weeks, we have been planning for the next school year by working with teachers, school leaders, and health experts. This week, the Metro Denver Health Partnership, a coalition of local health departments, released new guidance on reopening schools that emphasizes the whole child support that schools provide to the community. They also shared the emerging science-based and evidence-based data of the limited transmission risks from students in the school setting. Based on this new, updated guidance from our health experts, We're very pleased to announce that we are now working toward opening all schools for full in-person instruction in August. We're developing a detailed plan for a return to full in-person instruction, and we'll be sharing more updates in the coming weeks. We've all seen how frequently the health conditions have changed, and we are prepared to change along with them. Our educator-led work group did a terrific job of putting together a plan for a hybrid model of in-person instruction and remote instruction. And if necessary, we're prepared to move in that direction if the health conditions change. We'll also follow the health department's requirements for how we handle any confirmed cases of COVID-19 in our schools. To continue the limited spread of coronavirus and prioritizing the health and safety of students and staff, school will look different. Students and families can expect some of these changes to be things like including health screenings of all students and staff before they come to school or when they get there, the use of masks while in a school or district building, adjusted class schedules to keep groups of students together, limiting student movement in the building throughout the day, providing an ample supply of hand sanitizer and soap with required timed check-ins for frequent hand washing and regular disinfecting of schools. We know that some families still may not be comfortable sending their children back for in-person instruction, and that some staff members who are higher risk may not be able to work in person. We will be offering a full-time online school program for students in kindergarten through 12th grade, and we'll make accommodations for any staff who need added safety measures or may not be able to work in person or by allowing them to work remotely. We know that the COVID-19 crisis isn't over, and even with these adjustments and as we continue to fight against this global pandemic, I know that I share the excitement of many of my fellow educators and family members as we prepare to open up our schools to students again. I believe together we can keep both our community safe and healthy and welcome students back into the classroom. So I'd be happy to open it up for any questions that you may have.
So you talked about masks. Are they optional or are they mandatory?
So we are going to be following the guidance of the local health professionals, which state that masks are required unless there's a medical reason that does not allow a person to wear a mask. In the event that a mask is not feasible, we will be strictly enforcing social distancing.
So what does that mean? I'm glad you brought up social distancing. What does that mean for the classroom size so that you have to reach
Sure. So under this guidance, the guidance encourages the use of 6 feet of social distancing when possible, but is not required. So we will be doing things like setting up classrooms differently, moving away from tables into individual desks to minimize interactions and provide more space for social distancing, strictly enforcing the use of masks, hand washing, all of those safety precautions in the event that there isn't 6 feet of distance in between. We're also purchasing plexiglass dividers so that if a teacher is conferencing with a student, it's a clear divider. The teacher can sit on one side of it, the student on the other, to minimize any spread of droplets, as they say.
You had also mentioned screenings at the door. What would that look like for parents every day?
Sure. So we will be asking everybody to complete a health screen every day prior to coming into school or into any of our district buildings. That health screen will ask people to monitor their temperature and to confirm that they don't have any symptoms. Very similar to what we are seeing if you go into a doctor's office today. If you don't do that before you get to school, we are working on an app that would allow people to enter their information in an app. If you don't enter it before, we would do the health screen before kids come into the building.
You mentioned purchasing more desks for classrooms that may have previously had tables, purchasing plexiglass, things like that. Any idea on a price tag on those additional purchases?
Sure. So we are in the process right now of working on all of those purchases. Fortunately, we have received funding through the CARES Act, specifically for COVID-19 related expenses, and we are in the process of doing all of that, and so we will be sharing all of that information publicly once we're finished.
What were the primary factors driving this decision?
Yeah, thank you. We've been working, as I said, with an educator-led work group with teachers, school leaders in collaboration with the DCTA on what next year would look like. We felt it was really important that we started with our teachers and leaders on the design for next year, and simultaneously doing regular check-ins at least every other week, if not weekly, with our local health partners through Denver Health. We also have been working in collaboration with metro area school districts on plans for reopening school next year. The emerging data through the health professionals really is what's guiding this decision. When we stood in front of our community in March, that was based on the guidance that we had at that time from our local health professionals about the move to an extended spring break. And this, in the exact same way, is based on the guidance from our local health professionals around the compelling rationale to have kids in school, the compelling data around the low transmission with young people, and on the evidence that we are seeing from international school systems that have opened up. And it's been actually really helpful to see both the do's and the don'ts from international systems, some systems that have stayed open throughout the global pandemic, some systems that closed down and reopened successfully, including some school systems that reopened and then had to close again. And so the emerging data, I think, gives us a lot of information about how to implement the protocols to make sure that our staff and our students and our community are safe. So it's really important, for example, this question around masks, that you enforce the use of social distancing, and if you are not enforcing the use of social distancing, that masks are required. So that's a very important thing. It's not sort of like an a la carte that you don't have to do, like masks are uncomfortable, so we won't use them. That's not going to be a choice. And I think it's really important that we just name, we see school systems around the globe where students are in school using masks and adjusting to what that's like. And it's part of what I think is going to be important for us here to do as well, because of the compelling need for kids to be in school. And I do just want to reiterate, we're a district that serves an incredibly diverse population. Many of our students, just about 60% of our students, qualify for free and reduced lunch. In addition to getting meals in school, something that we've been very dedicated to delivering throughout the remote learning and this summer, it's far more than food. Our students depend on our schools for access and opportunity to learning, resources around mental health, the support that they get from their teachers on the incidental aspects of growing up. A lot of the learning that happens in school comes from the academic subjects, but it's also all of the work that students engage in problem solving, in collaboration, in the normal aspects of growing up that kids don't have access to when they're not in school. I also just want to share, we have really thought about, particularly with the hybrid model, which would have allowed us to have potentially fewer students in school. We don't actually think that that would create a safer environment, because on the days when students are not with us, there's no guarantee that they are following the safe practices that they would be in school. And so actually having kids in school gives us the opportunity to ensure that 5 days a week, in addition to all of the safety measures that we will be implementing, all of the academic learning that will be happening, we can help increase the understanding of the importance of following these health guidelines as we adjust as a community.
How this will impact sports and other extracurricular activities?
Yeah, thank you. So we've been working really closely with CHASA, which is the organization that oversees high school athletics and activities. They have released guidance. They've worked very closely with Children's Hospital around guidance for health and safety precautions for athletics and for activities, and so we are following those guidelines. We will be starting up the beginning of athletics on July 6th, and so in those settings, again, we will be following all of the CHASA guidelines to keep people healthy and safe. It is also important to name, in the unfortunate event, if we do have a confirmed case, we will be using required quarantining. Fortunately, we have a lot of practice now with how remote learning can look, and so our goal is to be very quick and agile in responding to the changing conditions. If there is a confirmed case, the group of students and teachers who were associated with that, any staff members, would go into a mandatory quarantine for 14 days. Inside our schools, we're going to be following all of the precautions that the health and safety guidelines. In sports, in organized sports, there are additional considerations that we need to use, and so we're going to be monitoring that as closely as possible. There are some lots of questions still, and we're working very diligently to get details on all of these around all electives, including things like, should we offer choir? We're still trying to determine if that makes sense in this environment. There's been certainly some documented evidence that singing is a way to spread the virus efficiently, and so we may be making some adjustments to classes like that. Sí, claro.
Por lo que estamos escuchando, va a aplicarse un sistema dual en el que el estudiante o la familia pueden escoger presencial o en línea. ¿Tiene alguna guía sobre cómo las familias pueden tomar esa decisión, en este caso las familias hispanas?
Gracias. So, para nuestras familias, para todos, estamos mandando una encuesta que pide información si quiere mandar sus hijos a la escuela en vivo o si quieren escoger una opción en línea, por remote, por distancia. Vamos a ofrecer esta opción de clases en línea para cualquier alumno que lo quiere, que lo escoja, de kinder hasta el grado 12. Desafortunadamente no podemos hacer este programa para pre-kinder, pero adentro de nuestros edificios tendremos pre-kinder para alumnos de 3 y 4 años.
En español, para la mención, como parte de la reducción del presupuesto de DPS, ¿cómo piensan afrontarlo y si tienen pensado reducir la cantidad de profesores o el sueldo de los profesores?
Muchísimas gracias. Esta pregunta es muy importante. Estamos en el proceso ahora de crear el presupuesto para el año siguiente. Y gracias al liderazgo de la mesa directiva de las escuelas públicas de Denver, tenemos algunos principios que queremos usar para tomar decisiones. No queremos cortar trabajos, no queremos disminuir la cantidad de dinero adentro de las escuelas. Primeramente, estamos buscando eficaces adentro de los presupuestos de la administración central. También queríamos asegurar que estamos ayudando a los empleados que ganan lo menos, los que ganan bajo de $25 a la hora. Todos ellos van a recibir un aumento a su salario, y otros que están arriba en sus sueldos van a recibir cortes. Yo, por ejemplo, voluntariamente estoy cortando mi sueldo por 10%. No tenemos planes para quitar maestros, nada de esto.
What kind of feedback did you get from parents when you put out the hybrid model proposal, and how did that influence this decision that you're making today? And then sort of follow-up question to that, what are you doing so that the online offering is maybe more responsive
Sure.
to students' needs than what we had in the spring?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So, a few weeks ago, we did put out a survey asking parents to give us their input on hybrid models, 3 different hybrid models in the event that we need to go that route. The feedback, what I would say was pretty loud and clear, that a hybrid model might be necessary, but was not the first choice of the majority of parents. And I do want to assure all of our parents, if you have concerns about sending your students to school, we will have a 100% online model that you can select. But it was pretty overwhelming, the parents who wrote in and said, we tried to make it work during this spring, but the data that's emerging around young people and COVID-19 indicates that kids can be safe in school if you follow health and safety guidelines. And so definitely we felt like it was important that when we got permission to have schools reopen, that was something that we should undertake because of the importance to families and the importance for students. For the online model, thank you. We are working currently with the principal of our online school. We do have an online school. We've had one for several years that serves secondary students. We are working with him to build out a K-12 model that would be centrally built out, looking at different options for curriculum so that it would actually run as designed as an online program to support students with online schooling opportunities for this coming year.
I heard you mention that you don't plan to cut teachers or salaries currently. Could you explain a little bit more? I understand that school systems around the state right now are having to make some really tough decisions on the cuts they're having to make. What is the situation for this school system?
Sure, yeah. It is still very, very challenging. We are definitely facing a very challenging budget deficit this year, and it is likely that in the coming years that it may not get easier. We have looked, for example, this year at several areas where we can find one-time savings that we can use to help us this year. And I do want to just really thank Vice President Bacon, who's been one of the board directors helping lead the Budget Advisory Committee around guidance to the board for the development of the budget. And so, Director Bacon, do you want to share anything about that process or how we've been doing that?
Sure. Just briefly, we convened a committee of stakeholders from parents to employees to students to help name the values in which the district should follow when determining what our next steps are around the budget. We prioritized a few things. One, finding the one-time savings, making shifts or cuts to things that we would call, or aspects we would call deficiencies, finding efficiencies. And then we also took an approach of being able to support as many employees as we can. We know our role as an employer in the state and city and county. And we also took a progressive approach to any adjustments for salary, if that helps.
Here and then there, yeah.
I'm wondering, because we're hearing that there might be another surge, are you guys prepared, do you think, in this scholastic year to potentially have to close down again? And what would you do kind of differently, or what
Sure.
lessons did you learn?
Yeah, so thank you. One thing that I definitely have learned, and I think the entire organization deserves just huge credit for this, our team members, our teachers, our school leaders, our support staff are incredibly dedicated to doing what makes sense and works for our kids. And so when we look at where we were on March, I don't remember, March 13th, I think, 12th or 13th, when we were announcing that we were going to go into an extended spring break, within 3 weeks, we stood up a remote learning approach, distributed 50,000 laptops, close to 10,000 hotspots, helped countless families. We estimate that about 60% of our families had broadband in their home. Before we went out on remote learning, that number is closer to 95% at this point. We're working really hard to close that gap to make sure it's 100% of our families that have reliable broadband within their homes. I want to really thank all of the partners, including the DCTA, CEA, Coloradans for the Common Good, who helped advocate for more universal access to broadband because of the critical importance for learning when it comes to serving kids in a remote environment. And huge kudos to Comcast. They've extended their Internet Essentials program, which offered initially 2 free months of internet, and they've extended that offer to families that qualify for Internet Essentials to continue to have free internet in their homes. Families that qualify for free and reduced lunch now have free internet in their homes through Comcast. And so it's really important. If you had asked me, could you do this? I don't know that I would have been able to say, yes, we could. So what we have learned is we can. We have learned a lot about what really is important in remote learning. And if we need to shift, we will be able to implement much more effectively a program for 2 weeks if a class needs to go out for 2 weeks, or for longer if a school needs to go out for longer. And I'd like to share just a few of the things that we've learned. We've done extensive surveying of our students, their parents and our teachers on what has worked and what has not worked. By far, the classrooms that had more opportunities for synchronous real-time classes, students and teachers reported better engagement and better learning. So that is definitely one of the things we know is really important. But we also know that for families that are working, the critical importance of having videotaped lessons so that if they are not available for the real-time class, they don't miss out their only opportunity to be able to do that. And we heard from countless families, for example, whose grandparents were watching grandchildren and couldn't figure out computers and they couldn't get to the lesson until the evening. So we definitely have learned that. We've also learned how important it is to emphasize, how important it is to emphasize the social emotional aspects of learning and not just the academic. And that's classrooms during remote learning that had an intentional social emotional learning lesson, a class check-in, a team meeting, really checking in, like how are people doing, making referrals for telemedicine. We had ongoing mental health supports for students during remote learning, and we know that that's really important. Another thing we learned, we transitioned so quickly that we really allowed for many different platforms. Our recommendation will be to limit the number of platforms. It was hard for parents. If you had 3 kids and 3 teachers using 3 different systems, this one using Zoom and this one using Google and this one using Seesaw, was really challenging. And so we will limit, reduce the number of platforms to make it easier for students and families and teachers.
If you're offering online and you're having in person, how are you going to be deploying your teacher staff to make sure? Are you going to? I mean, obviously, I don't think hiring a lot of new teachers is in the budget.
Yeah.
I mean, do you have enough people to do all of that?
Yeah, so thank you. So I am imagining this right now as sort of like a big Match.com for schools problem where we need to first find out how many students are going to select the full-time remote. We're calling that our online school option, which we want to differentiate. We know that there will be times when a class needs to move into remote. That really is when there's a documented infection and it's a short period of time. The teacher and the kids would go into remote. For our online school, the first piece of business is to just determine how many kids are selecting that option. We are also asking our staff to let us know if they have high-risk factors that would not allow them to work in our school buildings. And so we will be looking at what kind of match we can make between teachers who aren't able to teach in person and students who aren't able to come in person for the online school, and try to figure that out. At the end of getting that data, if we need to determine reassigning teachers or hiring through CARES funding, that's something that we'll consider at that point.
I don't mean to dominate, but I did have a follow-up question about the quarantine.
Yep.
Is that going to be, so if there's an indication in the classroom and you're doing a mandatory quarantine, would that extend it to the families of the students and their siblings?
I actually don't know that. I'd be happy to get you connected to the Metro Denver Health Partnership to get that question answered. Yeah, sure. Yeah. We don't really have control over what families do at home. What we would do is report that, and through contact tracing, the guidance around who needs to quarantine would happen. Yeah.
I think I do know for my students that are remote learning situation, because I had a lot of adults. I'm wondering, as kids go back to school, are you instructing teachers to take any special steps toward gauging where students are at so that they know how to
Sure. Yeah, we do think it's going to be really important that we support our teachers and students with opportunities for acceleration based on the time that we spent in remote learning. And so our academic teams have been hard at work. There's been a lot of work that's going on nationally around how we think about the essential learnings in the standards for every grade, thinking about opportunities to go deeper as opposed to broad, to try to ensure that we are capturing those essential learnings and help accelerate learning versus a remediation approach. So we're just sending out that survey now, and so we will have that available for parents for the next several weeks. I think it's at least 2 or 3 weeks to try to get that information back. We can get you the deadline. I don't have it in front of me. Great. Well, I want to thank everybody for your time here today, and certainly we will be available to continue this ongoing conversation with more details. Thank you.